Hey guys, what's up? Shats here. So, kinda strange, huh? To see some Dark Souls parody footage out of nowhere. But yeah, what you see here basically is a time lapse. And this is the only footage I've recorded of me working on Dark Souls 3 parody. And there are many reasons why this is the only footage that I have, but I'll get into that in a second. I'll try also to explain some technical stuff, but in a way that, maybe it's understandable and fun to everybody, rather than boring explanations. So I want to give you some backstory on the production of this video. Overall, it was a very troubled one for many reasons, both related to family stuff that was going on at the time, and also, well, the fact that this was a 25 minutes cartoon, which is like my longest cartoon till this day, So the grind to complete this tune was so heavy that even setting up the program to record myself was only adding more unneeded hurdles to my workflow. And my workflow was all over the map, by the way. I was working by night and sleeping by day. Easiest one of the shittiest periods of my life. I was like feeling like shit and physically feeling bad all the time. Though the Fallout 4 animation was also really bad, probably more because I was unexperienced in doing long animations back then. Also, there's the fact that when you are recording like hundreds of hours of footage, it takes a shit ton of space on your hard drive. But the main problem that I have till this day is that while I'm recording myself or I'm working, I don't know how to explain it exactly, but I kind of feel the pressure of people watching me, like somebody is watching me while I'm working, and I can see my mistakes, and so I feel the pressure, I'm kind of stressed, and yeah, it stressed the shit out of me, and I have to fix that problem, because I would love to start live streaming myself animating for the next parody, So in retrospect, I really wish that I recorded more footage of me animating Dark Souls 3, but it just wasn't possible at the time, So the original file at normal speed, if you watch this video that I sped up, it will be around 6 hours. But I sped up the footage X amount of times, I think like 100 times faster, so that it becomes more easy to watch for you guys. But speeding up the footage is kind of it's also a problem, because the footage is a bit jerky, and I'm sorry for that, but that's because I tend, especially in the first phase of drawing, I tend to zoom in and out while I'm drawing every time, So when I speed up the footage, it looks a little crazy, but it gets better near the end. So this scene right here, I would say that it is not one of the most challenging scene in the cartoon at all, actually. There are many scenes that are way more complicated than this one. On a scale from 1 to 10, I would say that this one was like 5. And that's because the scene doesn't have a background, which usually takes a lot of time to draw. And maybe the fact that the pose that you see of the character is kind of complicated. Maybe that was a little bit tricky, but both coloring and in general, this scene was pretty easy. There are many other scenes from the cartoon that were way more challenging. In a past video that should probably pop up in a notification now, I explained the whole Anne Orlando sequence, but that video was not, footage of me animating. Actually, it was like me explaining how I did it, basically. But yeah, if you watch that video, you should probably understand why it was complicated, especially the Jenga tower was kind of difficult to animate, because it was almost frame by frame. So let's see, definitely the eerie feel of the Boreal Valley shot, when you see the entire landscape, that was very complicated to do because of the buildings that appear and the cathedral. Also, the Pontiff attacking animation was kind of tricky. And the cemetery scene, which is the first shot inside the game, that was a little difficult because it's composed of many layers, you know, the tombs in the front, the characters, the zombies in the background. It has many layers so that when the camera moves, you get the impression of being there, you know. So another scene that was tricky was the castle of Lothric when the Dragon Slayer armor appears. That scene was difficult because of the perspective, you know. Every time I have to draw buildings and geometrical shapes, like for example a floor, it's always tricky, you know, because there's perspective involved. Both the scene when the Dragon Slayer armor appears and also the scene when I, you know, the player, I am watching the castle of Lothric from a distance. Then we have, like for example, yeah, the Soul of Cinder scene when he's dropping on his knees, then when he's defeated. That was another one that was difficult. And that's because, you know, when you are drawing a character, watching the head of a character from down to up basically is notoriously a difficult perspective to draw a head. That's because the jaw, it's just difficult to draw from that perspective for some reason, and I always get it, you know, wrong. So to get it right, I have to draw it and then erase it and draw it again and erase it again, and it's so tedious, you know. Also, I remember the background for the Gundyr fight was a pain in the ass to draw because of the many details on the tombs and the walls of the arena. And also I remember that the arena for the Crystal Sage was difficult to not a lot to draw actually, but to color. The coloring was difficult because the arena is hit by a light that is like a sunset, and so when something when you look at something that takes place at sunset, all the colors are a little more warm, and so it was a pain in the ass to change the colors to of the stones, for example, and make it a little more warm instead of being just like gray like a stone, you know. So I had to add a little more warm tint to every color, and that drove me basically insane. Let me now sum up the whole process of creating a single scene for animations like this one. So the first thing that I do is draw a storyboard, basically. So it's a rough version of the final scene. Then I try to sketch the storyboard in a digital version, just like you saw at the beginning of this video. Then I keep the sketch transparent, basically, so that I can draw the final clean lines over it. And then once the clean lines are finished, I start doing the coloring. Once the lines and the coloring are done, I start to do the animations, basically, and move maybe the arm and the hand and the head together. And all of these pieces basically are a single entity that I can move, that I can stretch and do whatever I need. After the main scene is completed, I export images that are transparent, and I do the compositing on After Effects that you will see probably soon on the screen. And maybe I add some effects that I need, like for example the background that you see. I can add also some glow, and also one thing that I usually do is adding some film grain to give it a more realistic feel to the shot. And then, even though you can't see that here, I export from After Effects the footage inside Premiere, where I do the editing, the final editing, and I add the sounds. Okay, so let's go back now to some technical drawing aspects of the scene. One of the reasons why the scene was not that crazy to draw is that I've already done another scene with Soul of Cinder involved. So at this point, all I had to do was pick the colors from the library. I just take the Soul of Cinder that I have already done, and with the color picker, I just pick up the colors that I have already chose, you know. So that's obviously very useful, but the tricky part of coloring is always choosing the colors the first time, you know. And so as you saw here, I was just picking up the colors from an already done Soul of Cinder and placing the colors on this character here. Obviously, you have to shade the character, you have to do some adjustments, and so it's always not easy, you know, but having already the colors ready, it's easier. And also, when I'm choosing the colors, I always have a shit ton of screenshots and references from the game itself. Though the colors from the game, you can't just, you know, pick the colors from the game and put them in the animations, because they don't fit well. The contrast from a video game is very different from a cartoon, so you have to make many adjustments to make it look more cartoony. So real quick, let me try to mention the references that are inside this particular scene here. So for those who know already Dark Souls, the series, know that this fight, the second phase, From Software basically tried to nudge to the last battle from Dark Souls 1, where you fight against Lord Gwyn. And that's because Soul of Cinder starts to grab you and attack you, just like Lord Gwyn did in Dark Souls 1. And so what I decided to do here is to show Lord Gwyn coming out of Soul of Cinder in a way that reminds, that is a reference to an anime and a manga called JoJo Bizarre Adventures. This is probably my favorite anime and my favorite manga ever. And it's about basically, well, it's difficult to explain, but basically the characters have like a phantom that can fight alongside them. And so also in every cover of the manga, they do some really crazy poses with their hands, you know, with their body. And so the reference here was to make Soul of Cinder have a similar pose to those characters from JoJo, and also have Lord Gwyn coming out like a phantom, just like in JoJo Bizarre Adventures. So it's kind of a reference inside a reference, if you know what I mean. And by the way, the music that is playing in this scene in the cartoon, many people ask me, what is this music, you know? So let me clear the air now by saying that it's a cover that I recorded by playing the guitar and also using, you know, virtual drums and bass, of a song from the 80s called Eye of the Tiger, which is a rock song and was featured also in Rocky. And so, yeah, it's a reference to the Rocky song Eye of the Tiger. And I thought it was appropriate, you know, because Soul of Cinder is grabbing me to smash me on the ground, basically. So it feels like a boxing match if you want to stretch the concept. So this is it, guys. I could probably go on forever talking about this parody, but I don't want to make this video too long. But yeah, thank you for watching, guys, and make sure to click the notification bell, because this week I'm gonna release on Friday or maybe Saturday a teaser about my new animation, and I'm sure you guys will be happy to see. And as usual, if you like this content, feel free to support my channel on Patreon if you want also to help me in the production of the next cartoon. As you can see, it's a very long and tedious process, but again, thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.